Hey, what's going on everyone? It's TechTactics here, and today we're going to be taking a look at how to build a video editing computer. So, if that sounds helpful or interesting, definitely stay through the intro so you can see what I have to say about that. Alright, and we're back. So now that we're done with the intro, let's go ahead and talk about how to build a video editing computer. So this is a little different than building a gaming computer, because for the number one component that you're going to want to look at and spend the most amount of money on is going to be your CPU, or Central Processing Unit. So now usually in a gaming computer you want to spend the most amount of money on your graphics card, but in terms of video editing, the graphics card doesn't really matter much. However, it is important, but we'll discuss that later. So the number one thing that you want to spend your money on is definitely the processor. Now, when you're looking at a processor, you're going to want to find the one with the most amount of cores. Now, usually AMD's side can look very tempting, as they have an 8-core for about $180, and Intel has a quad-core for around the same price. However, Intel's cores are going to be a lot stronger, but the 8350 will still beat the i5 for video editing. However, if you have the extra money, the i7 will beat the 8350. So basically, you're going to want to get the highest end, best CPU that you can possibly get, and the one with the most amount of cores, the most threads, and the highest speed, because video editing is very, very CPU demanding. So with that said, something else that you really going to need to spend a lot of money on is going to be RAM. Now, obviously, you can get by on as low as 4 gigs of RAM. I'd recommend at minimum 8, and to have the perfect amount, I'd say 16. Now, of course, you can easily use more than that. I've seen people have video editing systems with as much as 128 gigs of RAM. But for the average video editor, or just beginning, or just YouTube editing, you're not going to really need more than 16, maybe 32. But 16 should be enough. So, high-speed RAM is still unnecessary, just as it is for a gaming computer, but it can still be a little bit helpful. Usually it's a little more helpful in video editing than it is in gaming, but it's still not necessary, as 1600 to 2400, the jump between those aren't really going to be much of a difference. However, if you have the extra money, or the price is very similar, then it's definitely gonna only help. It's not gonna hurt you. So now that we have 16 gigs of RAM and we have a nice CPU, what do you look at next? Well, the next important thing is going to be having an SSD. Now, I recommend having an SSD for everything, whether it's just a laptop, a basic computer, a gaming computer, or a video editing computer. The SSD is really gonna speed things up, make it a lot more snappy. However, with video editing, if you have your software on there, it's going to make it even faster, and it's going to make it a lot smoother, and it will probably help your rendering times too. So it's definitely going to be helpful, and you definitely want as big of an SSD as you can get. However, if you can only afford a 256 or 128 gig, that's not going to be a problem, because the next important thing is going to be a decent amount of storage. Now, for a video editing machine, I'd recommend a minimum of 1 terabyte hard drive. Obviously, if you can get more, that'd be great. Now, for my use, I edit a lot of videos, and personally, I'd like to get maybe a 2 to 4 terabyte drive. However, how much storage you need is going to fluctuate depending on how many videos, what resolution you're rendering at, and just how many videos basically you plan on making. So take that into consideration, but at the same time, I still recommend 1 terabyte, as you can get a cheap drive for about $50. The faster the drive, the better it will be, but mind you, you still have your SSD, so getting a fast hard drive isn't going to be very important. What's going to be important is getting as much storage as possible. So, moving on, you're going to want to get decent cooling for your CPU. Now, of course, this isn't as important as the other things, but getting good cooling is definitely going to help you, because you'll be able to overclock your processor, thus making your processor faster and making video editing and rendering even better. So that's definitely going to be something that you want to look at you might even want to consider a closed loop liquid cooler so that you can really bring those temps down and the clock speed up. The next important thing, of course, is still going to be a GPU. Now, a lot of people don't realize that a graphics card is still actually really important in even a video editing computer. Although you could get by on just built-in integrated graphics, having a dedicated graphics card with CUDA acceleration or OpenCL acceleration is really going to help your rendering times. The higher end the GPU, the better, because if you have a 780 and use CUDA acceleration, that has a lot of CUDA cores, and that's really going to help accelerate your rendering. However, if you get just an integrated graphics, you can't use accelerated rendering, and it will make your rendering a bit longer. However, in video editing, you really don't need SLI, especially not three-way SLI, because you're not going to see any much of an increase in performance and rendering times upon having 2 or 3 graphics cards rather than having just one. So one decent graphics card or high-end graphics card is really going to help you out. But like I said, just basically afford the best CPU or buy the best CPU you can afford and then worry about the graphics card instead of worrying about the graphics card and then the CPU. So the next important thing is you're going to want a nice monitor. Now, this might seem a little ridiculous. Of course, you can get by on any monitor, but the bigger the monitor, the better. Now, for my preference, I'd like at least the 27 or 29-inch monitor if I'm only using one. The LG 34-inch would be a really nice choice, though. However, if you only have a 22-inch or a 23-inch monitor, I'd recommend getting a minimum of 2, and 3 would really help you out, because a lot of the times when you're video editing, you are going to want the video playback in one monitor, the editing software on the other monitor, and a Chrome tab open in one, or something like that, because usually you're going to be doing heavy multitasking and having a lot of things going at once, and the more monitors you have, the more things that you can see at once. So that's really going to help you out. Something else that might seem a little surprising, I'd still recommend nice speakers. The reason why you want nice speakers is because you're really going to want to hear the sound as best you can. You're going to want accurate playback in terms of sound quality so that you can really get an idea of how it sounds, and you might even want to adjust the volume or the peak of your sound. So those are probably the most important things for a video editing computer. Now, of course, all the components are important, but the most important thing, the number one thing, is going to be the CPU, and then the RAM, and then the storage, and then the graphics card. The things that you shouldn't do when building a video editing computer, definitely don't buy the best graphics card you can, and then worry about the CPU. In terms of gaming, things will be completely changed. You would actually want to do that. But for video editing, you definitely want to do it the other way around, where you look at the best CPU you can get, and then the graphics card. Now, the next thing is, I'd still even consider RAM more important, so the next thing I wouldn't personally do is I would still worry about RAM and then the graphics card. So you shouldn't get the best graphics card you can and then only 4 gigs of RAM. The smarter decision would be getting 8 to 16 gigs of RAM and then a little bit cheaper graphics card. And the last and final important thing that you probably shouldn't do is you probably shouldn't crossfire or SLI. Of course, you can if you want to, especially if you're going to be having multiple graphics cards like I recommend, multiple monitors like I recommended you should. However, it's still not really going to increase your performance, so I wouldn't recommend spending unnecessary money on another graphics card if you're only going to be video editing on a single monitor or even 2 monitors, because it's not really going to help your rendering times or performance in any way. So that's about it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully it helped you build an editing computer. And if it didn't, leave a comment down below so I can answer your question. And if you did enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe for a lot of other computer-related and technology-related videos that you will find on my channel. So that's about it. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you very soon. Peace. Hey, what's going on, YouTube? It's TechTactics here, and today we're going to be comparing the 120mm fan to a 140mm fan to this giant 200mm fan.